Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who joins us from around the world. We're so glad you're here. This is Andrew and Renee. Welcome to the Snack Series. Today we are exploring muscle-centric medicine and the science of skeletal muscle as an organ of longevity. And, I have to be honest, when I first got this stack of research, all these papers from Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Dr. Donald Lehman, that whole group, I had this immediate reaction. I thought, oh, okay, here we go. Another fitness discussion.
Right.
We're going to talk about getting six-pack abs for the summer.
It's the usual assumption, isn't it, that muscle is all about aesthetics?
It is. We put muscle into one of two boxes. Box one is the aesthetic box, bodybuilders on stage,
Right.
veins popping, all of that.
Sure.
Or it's purely functional, purely mechanical. My leg muscles exist to carry my skeleton to the kitchen. We think of it as meat, really. Just a system of pulleys and levers.
A very passive tissue, just sitting there waiting for orders.
Exactly. But going through this research, I feel like I've been looking at the human body completely wrong my entire life.
I think you're in good company there. Most of the medical world has been, too, for a very, very long time.
Well, that's the thing. The core argument in these papers, it isn't about looking good. It's about survival.
Yeah.
The literature you've pulled together suggests that skeletal muscle is actually the largest endocrine organ in the body.
And that right there, that is the paradigm shift. If you take only one thing away from our entire conversation today, it has to be that concept. Muscle isn't just a structural suit you wear around.
That's just meat.
It's not just meat. It is a biologically active organ system. And to your point, by mass, it is the largest endocrine organ you have.
Wait, larger than the thyroid? Larger than the pancreas or the adrenal glands?
By sheer weight and volume. Absolutely. It's not even close. I mean, think about it. In a healthy adult, skeletal muscle can be 40, maybe 45% of their total body weight.
That's a huge percentage of us.
It is. And for decades, the thinking was that all that tissue is just, sitting there inert, waiting for a nerve to tell it to contract. But what the science is showing us now, what Dr. Lyon's work highlights so well, is that this tissue is constantly talking. It's secretory. It's communicating with your liver, your brain, your bones, your immune system, your fat tissue.
Okay, so this massive organ, which we've basically been ignoring or treating like dead weight, is actually the hub of communication.
Yeah.
And this ties into the central thesis of the stack, right? That we have a fat-centric view of health. We're obsessed with the obesity epidemic.
Correct. That's the lens through which we view all metabolic disease. We look at a person, and our diagnosis is you are overfat. So the prescription is, naturally, lose the fat.
Eat less, move more. The standard line.
But the muscle-centric model completely flips that on its head. It suggests that the real crisis, the root cause of all this metabolic chaos, diabetes, heart disease, you name it, isn't that we're overfat, but that we are profoundly undermuscled.
That's a massive reframing.
Yeah.
So we're not just heavy, we're fundamentally frail.
We've lost the organ that manages our metabolic health. The fat is just the symptom of that underlying problem.
I want to really take our time with this because that idea, it changes everything about how we approach health and aging especially. We have a ton of ground to cover, so maybe we should lay out a roadmap for everyone listening.
Good idea.
We're going to structure this conversation in 4 parts. First, we'll cover the foundations. What we mean when we say muscle is an organ, and we'll unpack this idea of a metabolic sink.
At the absolute basics, yeah.
Second, we'll get into the active debate. This is the how-to. We're going to dive into the protein argument, how much you really need, because the numbers in here are way higher than I thought, and we'll talk about the specific types of training that matter.
The practical application.
Exactly. Third, the frontiers. This is the really exciting, almost sci-fi stuff. How muscle talks to the brain, how it armors your immune system, and even its role in fighting cancer.
Well, might change everything, yeah.
And finally, we'll look at the implications. What does this mean for society, for aging, for healthcare economics?
It's a full picture, and I think we have to start right at the beginning with that foundational shift, this idea of muscle as a secretory organ.
Okay, let's do it. Part 1, foundations. When you say secretory organ, my mind goes to, glands. The pancreas secretes insulin. The thyroid secretes hormones. What on earth is my bicep secreting when I lift a bag of groceries?
It's secreting hundreds of different molecules, but the collective term for them is myokines.
Myokines, okay.
Yes. The term was actually coined back in the early 2000s by a Danish researcher, Bente Klarlund Pedersen. Myo, meaning muscle, and kine from cytokine, which are these small proteins crucial in cell signaling.
So muscle signals.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
When you contract your muscles, I mean any contraction, from a heavy deadlift to a brisk walk up a hill, your muscle fibers are literally squeezing out these biochemical messengers into your bloodstream.
I like analogies. My nervous system is the body's internet, sending emails. What are myokines?
Myokines are like system-wide text message alerts. You do a set of squats, and your quadriceps and glutes send out a blast of chemical texts to every other organ in the body.
A text to the liver saying what?
A text to the liver saying, hey, we're using up glucose here, get ready to release some more, and by the way, improve your insulin sensitivity. It texts your fat tissue saying, break yourself down, release fatty acids for fuel. It texts your bones saying, we're under load here, you need to get denser and stronger. It even texts your brain.
If I'm just sitting on the couch all day binge watching a show?
Then your phone is off, no texts are being sent, the communication lines go dead. And that systemic silence, that lack of communication, is the environment where chronic disease begins to thrive.
Can we get specific? Give me an example of one of these text messages. What's a really important myokine?
Okay, a fantastic example is interleukin-6, or IL-6. This one is fascinating because it has this dual personality. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde molecule. In the medical world, for a long time, IL-6 was seen as the bad guy. If we do a blood test on someone who is sedentary and metabolically unhealthy, and we see chronically high levels of IL-6, that's a huge red flag.
For what?
It's a marker of chronic systemic inflammation. It's associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. It's the cytokine boogeyman.
Right, and we're always told that chronic inflammation is the root of all evil in modern health.
And in that context, it is. But here's the amazing part. When IL-6 is released by contracting skeletal muscle during exercise, it acts in a completely different way.
How so?
First, it's a transient spike. It shoots up during your workout and then comes right back down within a few hours. It doesn't stay chronically elevated. And in that specific context released from the muscle, in a pulse, it is profoundly anti-inflammatory.
Wait. The same molecule is a villain in one context and a hero in another.
Precisely. The muscle-derived IL-6 actually inhibits the production of other inflammatory molecules like TNF-alpha. It also goes to your visceral fat, the dangerous fat around your organs, and tells it to break down. It improves insulin signaling.
So it's all about the origin story, where it comes from and for how long.
Exactly. When it comes from the muscle, it's a signal to the body to clean house and optimize its metabolism. So when you hear someone say exercise reduces inflammation, it's not just some vague wellness slogan. You are literally generating your own anti-inflammatory drugs inside your muscles every time you train.
That's the pharmacy within concept that Dr. Lyon talks about. It's powerful.
It is.
Okay, let's move to the other huge foundational idea, which I think is maybe even more critical for people to grasp in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
The concept of the metabolic sink.
Yes. If myokines are the communication system, the metabolic sink is the storage and disposal system. This is probably the most important function of muscle for preventing the metabolic diseases that plague the modern world.
So break this down for me. When I hear sink, I think of a kitchen sink full of dirty dishes.
That's not a bad way to think about it, actually. Imagine all the carbohydrates you eat, bread, pasta, fruit, sugar, get broken down into glucose, which is sugar in your blood.
Right.
Now, your body is very, very sensitive to high blood sugar. It's toxic. It's like acid washing your blood vessels. It damages nerves, your eyes, your kidneys. So the body has an emergency response system to clear that sugar out of the blood as quickly as possible.
And that's insulin's job. Insulin is the
plumber, I guess.
Insulin is the key.
Yeah.
It unlocks the doors to your cells to let the glucose in. Now, here is the statistic that should stop everyone in their tracks. Skeletal muscle is responsible for disposing of roughly 80% of all the glucose from your bloodstream after a meal.
80. So not the liver, not fat cells, mostly muscle.
The vast majority. It is the primary destination for the sugar you eat. So let's use a different analogy. Imagine your total muscle mass is a suitcase.
Okay, a suitcase. I'm with you. If you are an active person, you do some resistance training, you have healthy muscle mass, you have a large suitcase, a big empty Samsonite.
Plenty of room.
Plenty of room. So you eat that bowl of pasta, the glucose enters your bloodstream, insulin comes along, unlocks the door to your muscle cells, and all that glucose gets neatly packed away into the suitcase as glycogen to be used for energy later. Your blood sugar stays stable, your insulin levels stay low, the system works beautifully.
But what if I What if I'm sedentary? What if I've been sitting at a desk for the last 20 years? What kind of suitcase do I have?
You have a tiny suitcase, maybe a small carry-on bag. Because you haven't been stimulating your muscles, they've atrophied. You have low muscle mass.
Okay, so a small suitcase.
And not only is it small, but because you're not moving, it's probably already full from yesterday's meals. The glycogen stores are topped off.
There's no room at the end.
Exactly. So now you, with your small, full suitcase, eat that same bowl of pasta. The glucose floods your bloodstream, insulin shows up, knocks on the muscle cell door, and tries to shove the glucose in. But the muscle says, sorry, we're at capacity, no vacancy.
And this is insulin resistance.
This is the very definition of insulin resistance. The muscle cell is resisting the signal from insulin because it physically has nowhere to put the glucose.
So where does all that toxic sugar go?
Well, it has to go somewhere. So
Right.
it stays circulating in the blood for longer, causing damage. And then the liver has to work overtime to convert that excess sugar into triglycerides, which is fat. And where does that fat get stored?
My belly.
As visceral fat around your organs. And this connects directly back to Dr. Lyon's main thesis.
That obesity is a symptom.
Yes. We look at the person with the visceral fat and say, the problem is the fat. But the physiological reality is that the person has a failed metabolic sink. The fat is just the overflow parking lot because the primary storage facility, their muscle, is out of commission.
That is such a critical distinction. Because if the problem is too much fat, the solution we're always given is eat less, starve yourself.
A deprivation model.
But if the problem is failed muscle, the solution is build a bigger sink.
And those are two completely opposite approaches. If that person just goes on a crash diet, they'll lose weight, sure, but they will also lose even more precious muscle tissue, making their suitcase even smaller.
Oh, man. So they're actually making their underlying problem worse.
It's a vicious cycle. The next time they eat a carbohydrate, they're even less metabolically equipped to handle it.
And this leads us perfectly to the villain of this whole story, sarcopenia. I've heard the term, but I always associate it with, very frail, elderly people in nursing homes.
That's the end stage. That's the final chapter. But the book starts much, much earlier. Sarcopenia is defined as the age-related loss of muscle mass and function. And I have to stress the and function part. It's not just that the muscle gets smaller, it loses its quality.
It gets weaker.
Weaker, less powerful, less responsive. And the statistics are, well, they're pretty sobering. We begin to lose muscle mass in our 30s.
30s. Come on. I thought I had until at least my 60s before I had to worry about that.
I wish. The decline is subtle at first. The research suggests we lose somewhere between 3 to 8% of our muscle mass per decade after the age of 30.
Wow.
But it accelerates significantly after age 60. But here's the real kicker. Your strength declines even faster than your size. And your power, your ability to generate force, quickly declines fastest of all. We're talking about a potential loss of strength at a rate of 3% per year in later life.
So you might look in the mirror and not see a huge difference from one year to the next, but the engine inside is slowly seizing up.
That's a great way to put it. The muscle tissue itself changes. It becomes infiltrated with fat. We call it intramuscular adipose tissue. It's like the marbling you see in a steak.
That does not sound good.
It's not. The muscle is still there, but it's poor quality. It doesn't contract as well. It's more insulin resistant. And every bit of muscle you lose means you're losing your metabolic buffer. You're losing your myokine factory. You're losing your amino acid reservoir. Sarcopenia is called the silent epidemic because it doesn't hurt. It doesn't show up on a standard blood test. You don't know you have it until you fall and break your hip, or you can no longer get up out of a chair on your own.
It seems like we treat all the downstream consequences, the diabetes, the heart disease, the frailty, but we completely ignore the slow erosion of the very organ that could have prevented all of it.
Which is exactly why this shift to muscle-centric medicine is so critical. It's about being proactive. It's about building and maintaining this organ throughout your entire life.
Okay, that is a fantastic foundation. So muscle is an endocrine organ. It's our metabolic sink, and if we lose it, we're in big trouble. That brings us to section 2, the active debate. Because if muscle is this important, the next logical question is, okay, how do I get it? And how do I keep it?
The practical part.
The practical part. And this is where, frankly, I get confused, and I think a lot of people do. Nutrition advice feels like a pendulum swinging back and forth. One year it's high protein is king, the next it's plant-based is the only way and meat will kill you. But looking at this research, especially from Dr. Donald Layman, it seems like the official government guidelines for protein are, well, they're just wrong. Or at least misleading.
This is what we see a major clash between public health policy and the science of optimization. If you look up the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance for protein, it's set at zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Okay, so for like a 175-pound guy, that's what, around 65 grams of protein a day?
Roughly, yeah, maybe a little less. And that number sounds reasonable to most people. You have a couple of eggs for breakfast, a chicken breast for lunch, and you're pretty much there.
Right. It's easy to hit, so you think, I'm good, I get enough protein.
But we have to ask the question, what is the RDA for? What was it designed to do? The RDA is a survival metric. It is the absolute minimum amount of a nutrient you need to prevent a deficiency disease.
Like scurvy for vitamin C.
Exactly. The protein RDA is the amount you need to prevent diseases like kwashiorkor, which is severe protein malnutrition. It's the amount you need to not die. It was never, ever intended to be a metric for optimization. It's not the amount you need to thrive, to build and maintain muscle, or to prevent sarcopenia as you age.
It's the difference between just keeping the car from breaking down on the side of the road and tuning the engine to win a race.
A perfect analogy. So the work from Dr. Lyon, Dr. Lehman, and many others suggests that for longevity, for maintaining that metabolic sync, the target needs to be significantly higher. The consensus in this field is moving towards a range of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram.
That's basically double the RDA.
In many cases, yes. An easier rule of thumb they often use, which is great for people who don't want to do the math, is to aim for about 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight.
So if my ideal healthy weight is, say, 180 pounds, I should be aiming for 180 grams of protein. That seems like a lot.
It's a significant amount, yes. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really fascinating. The total daily number isn't even the most important part of the equation.
What do you mean?
We can argue about 150 grams versus 180 grams all day. But the real secret, the mechanism that unlocks muscle growth, is what's known as the leucine threshold. This was the big aha moment for me in all this research.
The leucine trigger. Okay, that sounds like a piece of military hardware. What is leucine and what is it triggering?
Leucine is an amino acid. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. But leucine is special. It's one of the 3 branched-chain amino acids, and it's not just a brick in the wall, it's also the foreman on the construction site. It's a signaling molecule.
Signal for what?
It's the primary signal that tells your body, okay, we have enough raw materials available, it's time to start building muscle. It directly activates a pathway called mTOR.
mTOR. In simple terms, what is that?
Think of mTOR as the general contractor for muscle building. He's powerful, but he's also really lazy. Most of the day, he's asleep in his truck at the construction site.
Okay. The other amino acids, the workers, they're all standing around with their bricks and mortar, but they can't start building the wall until the contractor wakes up and gives the order. So leucine is the alarm clock that wakes him up.
It's the alarm clock, but here's the crucial detail. He's a very, very heavy sleeper. You can't just whisper at him. You can't just nudge him. You have to shout. Muscle protein synthesis, which is the technical term for building muscle, is an all-or-nothing response. You can't turn the switch halfway on.
Binary, on or off.
Exactly. And to flip that switch to on, you need a critical dose of leucine. The research in humans suggests that threshold is somewhere around 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine in a single meal.
Okay, 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine. How does that translate to food I actually eat? I have a piece of toast with a little bit of peanut butter. Am I hitting that?
Not even close. And this brings us to what's often called the 30-gram rule. As a general guideline, to get that magical 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine from whole food sources like meat, fish, eggs, or dairy, you need to consume a minimum of about 30 grams of high-quality protein in one sitting.
30 grams in a single meal. Okay, so let's walk through a common scenario. It's a busy morning. I grab a little cup of Greek yogurt. I look at the label. It says 12 grams of protein. I eat it, and I pat myself on the back. Good job, me. I started the day with some protein.
And you did get calories. You got 12 grams of protein. But in terms of flipping the switch for muscle building, you failed.
Failed?
You whispered at the contractor. He rolled over and went back to sleep. The mTOR pathway was not activated. Your body takes those 12 grams of protein and might use them for other things, making enzymes, repairing skin cells, or it just burns them for energy, but it does not use them to build new muscle tissue.
But wait, I have to push back on that a little. It seems so wasteful. Why would evolution design a system that just ignores perfectly good protein just because you didn't eat enough at once? Wouldn't the body want to use every single bit of resource it gets?
That's a fantastic question, and it gets to the heart of how the body prioritizes things. It doesn't throw the protein away, but building muscle is metabolically expensive. It costs a lot of energy. The body does not want to start a big, expensive construction project unless it is absolutely certain it has enough supplies to see it through.
So the leucine threshold is like the body's proof of funds. It's saying, show me you have enough resources, and then I'll authorize the project.
That's the perfect way to think about it. If you don't show it the 30 grams of protein with its 3 grams of leucine, it says, nope, not enough certainty. We're not building today. Let's use these resources for cheaper, more immediate tasks.
So it's not wasted. It's just misallocated. It's not going to the place I want it to go.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And we have human clinical trials that show this in action. A French group, led by Arnold, did a famous study on this. They took 2 groups of older women and fed them the exact same total amount of protein per day.
Okay, so total daily intake was identical.
Identical, but the distribution was different. Group A, the spread group, ate their protein in 4 small, even meals throughout the day, kind of like grazing.
Which is what a lot of diet advice tells you to do, right? Eat small meals often.
Exactly. Group B was the pulse group. They ate 80% of their daily protein in one large meal at lunch.
The big bolus.
A big bolus, and the results were stunning. The pulse group, the ones who had that big spike that blew past the leucine threshold, they maintained their muscle mass. They were in what we call a positive nitrogen balance, the spread group. They were losing muscle tissue. They were catabolic, even though they were eating the same amount of protein.
That is insane. They were literally snacking their way into sarcopenia.
And this problem gets even worse as we get older because of a phenomenon called anabolic resistance.
Anabolic resistance. That sounds like the muscle is just getting stubborn in its old age.
That is exactly what's happening. As we age, our muscle cells become hard of hearing to the protein signal. The contractor in his truck, he's not just a heavy sleeper anymore, he's also put in earplugs.
Oh, okay.
So that 30-gram dose that worked perfectly for a 25-year-old might not be enough for a 65-year-old. The signal isn't loud enough to get through.
So older adults need more protein per meal, not less.
Significantly more. An older adult might need 35, 40, or even 45 grams of protein in a single meal to get the same muscle-building response that a young person gets from 25 or 30. And this is completely backwards from conventional wisdom.
Right. We tell older people, oh, your metabolism is slowing down. Eat less. Have some toast and tea for breakfast.
And in doing so, we are guaranteeing that they will never hit the leucine threshold. We are literally programming their bodies to waste away.
This is the huge takeaway. So, to summarize the nutrition side, stop grazing on low-protein snacks thinking you're doing yourself a favor. Prioritize 2 or 3 substantial meals a day that hit that 30, 40, or even 50-gram protein target.
You have to feed the tissue properly. But, and this is a huge but, you can eat all the protein in the world, and if you're just sitting on the couch, not much is going to happen. You also have to provide the stimulus.
The demand.
The demand. You have to earn the tissue through training.
Okay, let's get into that. The sources break down training into 3 distinct categories: hypertrophy, strength, and power. Now, I think most of us, myself included, kind of lump these together. I'm going to the gym to get strong. I'm going to build muscle. It's all in the same bucket.
In everyday language, sure.
Yeah.
But physiologically, they are different adaptations. And for longevity, understanding the difference is absolutely critical.
Okay, so let's break it down. Start with hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy is training for size. The goal is to increase the volume of the muscle cell itself. This is your classic bodybuilding style of training. Moderate weight, higher repetitions, usually in the 8 to 12 rep range. You're trying to create that pump.
And how does this connect back to what we were talking about earlier?
This directly builds a bigger metabolic sink. Hypertrophy is how you build a bigger suitcase. If your primary goal is to improve your glucose disposal and become more insulin sensitive, hypertrophy training is your best friend. You're creating more physical space to store energy.
Bigger suitcase. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, strength.
Strength is the ability to produce maximal force. This is heavy lifting. Lower reps, think 1 to 5. This isn't just about making the muscle bigger, it's about training your nervous system. It's teaching your brain how to recruit the maximum number of muscle fibers all at once.
And what's the real-world benefit of that, especially for aging?
Bone density, for one. The heavy loads required for strength training are a powerful signal to your bones to stay strong and resist osteoporosis. Functionally, strength is what allows you to lift a heavy suitcase into the overhead bin or to get up off the floor after playing with your grandkids.
But the one that really stood out to me in the research, the one that seems to be the most overlooked, is power.
Yes, power. This is the one almost nobody trains for, especially as they get older, and it may be the most important for maintaining independence.
Define it for us. What's the difference between strength and power?
Power is strength combined with speed. The equation is force times velocity. It's not just if you can move a load, but how fast you can move it.
Why does speed matter for a 78-year-old? I mean, they're not trying to set a new record in the 40-yard dash.
Think about the single most dangerous event for an older person. It's a fall.
Right. A fall could be a death sentence.
It can be. So let's break down the physics of a fall. You're walking, and your foot catches on the edge of a rug. In that instant, your center of mass lurches forward. Gravity is pulling you down, and it acts fast. To prevent your face from hitting the floor, you have milliseconds to react. You have to explosively shoot your other leg out to create a new base of support.
So you need to generate force very, very quickly.
Incredibly quickly. That is the definition of power. Strength is what helps you hold yourself up, but power is what allows you to get your foot out fast enough to catch yourself in the first place.
I see. So you could be strong enough to leg press 300 pounds slowly, but if you don't have the power to move your own body weight in a fraction of a second, you're still going down.
Precisely. And the data is terrifying. We lose power almost twice as fast as we lose strength. It's the first quality to go. This is because we lose our type 2 fast-twitch muscle fibers at a much higher rate, and those are our power fibers. This is why you see older people who seem fine walking slowly, but the moment they're knocked off balance, they have no rapid response system.
That's a scary thought. So how do you train for power safely if you're, say, 70 years old? You're not going to have them doing box jumps and clapping push-ups.
No, absolutely not. It's about intent. It can be as simple as standing up from a chair. You sit down in a controlled manner, and then you stand up as fast as you possibly can. Explode up. That intent to move quickly is what recruits those high-threshold motor units. It's a neurological training as much as it is muscular.
And you mentioned sitting down slowly. That brings up the last training modality from the sources, eccentric training.
Ah, yes, the hidden gem. Every lift has two phases. The concentric, where the muscle shortens like lifting a dumbbell, and the eccentric, where the muscle lengthens under load, like lowering the dumbbell.
Okay.
The fascinating thing is that you are significantly stronger in the eccentric phase. You can control a much heavier weight going down than you can lift going up.
Like when you're helping a friend move a heavy couch. It's easier to control it going down the stairs than to carry it up.
Exactly. But here's the magic for older or compromised populations. The eccentric phase has a very low metabolic cost. It barely raises your heart rate or blood pressure compared to the concentric phase.
So you're getting a high-force stimulus on the muscle, which is great for strength, but a low-stress stimulus on the heart.
Which makes it a perfect tool for the elderly or people with cardiovascular issues or COPD. They can get the muscle-building, strength-building signal by focusing on slowly lowering a weight without taxing their heart and lungs. It's an incredibly powerful and safe way to fight sarcopenia.
Wow. So it's not just go lift weights. It's like you need a diversified training portfolio, some hypertrophy for the sink, some strength of the bones, and some power for fall prevention.
That is the ideal prescription for longevity. We have to move beyond just telling older adults to go for a walk. Walking is wonderful for your heart, but it does almost nothing to build the muscle armor you need to survive old age.
Armor. That's the perfect word. And it leads us right into our third section, frontiers. This is where we see that muscle is literally acting as body armor for our immune system and, incredibly, for our brain.
This is the research that I find the most breathtaking. The connections we're now discovering are they're game changers. Let's start with the brain, the muscle-brain crosstalk.
Right. The sources call the myokines involved here hope molecules. I love that term, even if it sounds a little too poetic for a science discussion.
It is poetic, but it's based in hard biochemistry. When your muscles contract, they release these specific myokines, things like cathepsin B and a famous one called irisin. These molecules travel through your blood, and they have the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier.
They can get into the brain.
They get into the brain, and they stimulate the production of a crucial growth factor called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
We've talked about BDNF before. People call it miracle grow for the brain.
It's the perfect name for it. BDNF promotes neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells, and it strengthens the synapses, the connections between your existing neurons. And this happens in a big way in the hippocampus.
Which is ground zero for memory. It's the part of the brain that Alzheimer's disease devastates first.
Exactly. So the implication here is profound. There is a direct chemical line of communication from your quadriceps to your neurons. When you do a squat, you are literally sending a signal to your brain to grow and protect itself.
It makes so much sense from an evolutionary perspective, doesn't it? For 99% of human history, if you were moving your body vigorously, you weren't doing it on a treadmill.
You were hunting, you were escaping a predator, you were navigating new territory.
All things that require you to be cognitively sharp. You need to remember the landscape, you need to strategize.
Precisely. So the body evolved this beautiful feedback loop. Oh, the large muscles are contracting. That must mean we're in a high-stakes survival situation. Let's sharpen the brain. Let's turn up the processing power.
And the opposite is also true if you're sedentary all day.
The signal to the brain is, we're safe. We're in the cave. Nothing is happening. Power down. Conserve energy. And so the brain literally begins to atrophy from lack of stimulation. The link is so strong that resistance training is now being seriously studied as a frontline therapy for preventing dementia and even for treating depression.
A stronger body for a sharper mind. It's not a slogan, it's a mechanism.
It's a mechanism.
Okay, that's the brain.
Yeah.
What about the immune system? You used the word reservoir earlier.
This is the field of immunometabolism, and it's critical. We think of our immune system as these free-floating white blood cells, but that's an army. And an army needs a supply chain. It needs fuel and materials to fight a war.
What's the main fuel for the immune system?
Amino acids, especially an amino acid called glutamine. When your body is under severe stress fighting an infection like pneumonia, recovering from a major surgery, or battling cancer, your immune system's demand for amino acids goes through the roof. It needs them to build antibodies, to create new immune cells to fight the invaders.
And if you're sick in a hospital bed, you're probably not eating a big steak to get those amino acids.
Exactly. So the body has to get them from somewhere else. It needs an internal supply depot. And where is the single largest storage depot of amino acids in the entire human body?
Skeletal muscle.
It's your savings account. It is your strategic reserve of amino acids. When you get seriously ill, your body enters a highly catabolic state. It starts breaking down your own muscle tissue to liberate those amino acids to fuel the immune response. This is why people get so weak and lose so much weight when they're sick. It's not fat they're losing, it's functional muscle.
So someone with more muscle mass has a much deeper savings account to draw from during a crisis.
They have a massive war chest. And the research on this is unbelievably consistent. In nearly every single pathological condition you can study, cancer, severe burns, heart failure, sepsis, trauma, the patient with the most muscle mass has the highest survival rate. Period.
Because they don't run out of supplies, they don't go metabolically bankrupt.
Exactly. If you enter a fight with cancer and you are already frail and sarcopenic, you have no reserves. The body tries to fuel the immune response, but it quickly runs out of muscle to break down. This is the cachexia, the severe muscle wasting, that actually kills many cancer patients. Their bodies are bankrupted trying to survive.
That reframes everything. Building muscle isn't vanity, it's preparing for the inevitable battles of life. You're stockpiling the ammunition for your own immune system.
And it gets even more direct. There's emerging research looking at how myokines directly influence cancer. Data suggests that certain myokines released during exercise, like Spark and IL-15, may have direct tumor-suppressing effects.
You mean the myokines themselves might attack the tumor cells?
Or they tag them for destruction and mobilize the right immune cells to do the job. We know that exercise dramatically increases the circulation of natural killer cells, or NK cells.
The immune system's elite special forces.
They are the snipers. They seek out and destroy tumor cells and virally infected cells. A single bout of exercise can flood your bloodstream with NK cells. So you're not just stocking the armory, you're actively deploying your troops every time you train.
That is just, it's mind-blowing. It really solidifies this idea that muscle is medicine. It's not a cute metaphor.
Yeah.
It's a literal physiological fact.
It is. And if we accept all of this as true, and the science is becoming overwhelming, then it has massive implications for how we need to run our healthcare system and how we view aging as a society.
Which brings us to our final section.
Yeah.
Implications. If all this is true, what do we do about it? Because right now, if you're an older adult and you go to the doctor, the conversation is almost always about one thing.
Lose weight.
Lose weight. The number on the scale is too high.
It's the fat-centric model we started with.
Yeah.
We tell a 70-year-old woman her BMI is too high, her knees hurt, she needs to lose 20 pounds. So what does she do? She goes on a diet, she starts eating less, she has her toast for breakfast, a small salad for lunch, maybe some soup for dinner.
And the number on the scale goes down. Yeah. The doctor is happy. She's happy.
But what did she lose? Without hitting that protein threshold we talked about, which is impossible on a toast and soup diet. And without the stimulus of heavy resistance training, a huge percentage of that weight she lost wasn't fat. It was precious muscle tissue.
So she got smaller, but she actually got frailer. She made herself worse.
She is now what we call sarcopenic obese. She might weigh less, but her body composition is worse. Her metabolic sink is even smaller, her immune reservoir is dangerously low, and her power to prevent a fall is gone. We have, with the best of intentions, pushed her closer to the edge of the cliff.
So the prescription has to flip completely, from lose weight to build tissue.
Build tissue should be the new mantra for healthy aging, and it forces us to focus on health span, not just lifespan.
Can you define the difference between those two for us?
Lifespan is simple. It's a number of years you are alive. Modern medicine is phenomenal at extending lifespan. We have drugs and machines and procedures that can keep a human body technically alive into their 90s and beyond. But health span is the number of years you spend healthy, capable, independent, and free from chronic disease. It's the years you can get on the floor to play with your grandkids and get back up again, the years you can travel, carry your own bags, and live with dignity.
Not just years in life, but life in your years.
Exactly. And muscle is the single greatest driver of health span. It is the organ of independence. The economic cost of frailty is astronomical. Falls, broken hips, long-term care facilities. A hip fracture in an 85-year-old is very often a terminal event. These are the direct consequences of ignoring muscle health.
It's a fundamental shift from a treatment-based system to a prevention-based system, but one built on physiology, not just pharmaceuticals.
And there's a final, almost philosophical point here that I think is so important. It's the idea of voluntary control.
What do you mean by that?
Think about all your other major organs. You can't just tell your liver to produce more or less of an enzyme. You can't consciously will your heart rate to slow down. You can't tell your pancreas, hey, a little more insulin, please. Those systems are almost entirely autonomic.
Right. For most of my internal biology, I'm just along for the ride.
But skeletal muscle, it is the one and only major organ system over which you have near complete voluntary control.
I can choose right now to flex my bicep.
You can choose to contract it. You can choose what to feed it. You can choose to challenge it and make it grow. You have to earn this tissue. You can't buy it in a bottle. You can't get it from a pill. Even if you take hormones, you still need to provide the mechanical load. It is the one piece of your long-term health that you build entirely yourself.
That's an incredibly empowering thought. It takes away the feeling of being a victim to the aging process.
It does. Aging has biological realities, of course, but the rate of our decline and the quality of our life are profoundly under our control through the inputs we provide to this incredible organ.
So as we start to wrap up, let's try to distill this massive amount of information down into a few key actionable takeaways for everyone listening.
Let's do it. First, and most importantly, start thinking of your muscle as a living, active endocrine organ. It's your body's communication hub. Use it, or the conversation goes silent.
Okay. Number 1, muscle is an organ.
Number 2, you must hit the leucine threshold to build or maintain that organ. That means stop snacking on low-protein foods and start prioritizing meals with 30 to 50 grams of high-quality protein.
Wake up the lazy contractor.
Number 2, prioritize protein per meal.
Number 3, you have to train, and train with purpose. Not just to burn calories. You need some training for size hypertrophy to build your metabolic sink. You need heavy training for strength, and you absolutely need to train for power moving explosively to prevent falls.
Number 3, train for size, strength, and power.
And number 4, remember what you're training for. You're building your body's armor. You're building a pharmacy for your brain and a reservoir for your immune system. It is your health savings account for the future.
A compelling case, to say the least. It makes me want to end this right now and go lift something heavy.
That's the right impulse. But before we do, I want to leave the listeners with that final provocative thought you brought up when we were preparing. It really stuck with me.
Yes. I think this is a way to reframe the entire conversation we have with ourselves about exercise. We usually think of it as a chore, right? It's a transaction, a punishment for the donut we ate, or a way to burn calories to fit into a certain pair of pants.
It's penance, yeah.
But what if you stopped viewing exercise as a tool to burn calories and started viewing it as a mandatory prescription you have to fill every day? What if you truly understood that contracting your muscles is the only way to manufacture the specific medicines, the myokines, that your brain needs to stay sharp, that your immune system needs to fight off disease, and that your body needs to manage blood sugar? If you saw the squat rack not as a torture device, but as the pharmacy counter, how would that change your daily priorities?
That's a powerful shift. It turns the gym from a place of vanity into a place of vital medicine.
And that, I think, is the key to longevity.
Before we wrap up, thank you to all our partners, sponsors, and scholars who made this podcast and the research possible. We're truly grateful for your support. And to our listeners, thank you for being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and follow Stack Studios for more informative content and support us on Patreon. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and let the search for wisdom guide you forward. Have a great day.